Hi, everyone. My name is Chris, also known as Dramamine from 89.5 WSOU. And here I'm with Bryan Giles, guitarist and vocalist for legendary band Red Fang. Thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually almost been 20 years since you started Red Fang in 2005 in Portland. So as an artist, what does that achievement really mean to you?
I'm old, man. I don't know. Well, honestly, I'm surprised that we have lasted this long. And I'm happy about it. I still really enjoy I really enjoy touring and the creative process and writing music and stuff. So yeah, I think that I think just sticking to something, there's something to be said about that, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Why are you surprised by that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, people's perspectives change and everything. It's not common for a band to last that long. I don't think
Mm,
so. With original members, anyway.
yeah. So how do you keep that going? How do you maintain drive and motivation?
Well, I love writing music and truthfully, like uh, the analogy I use is coming up just riffing back and forth into practice space. There's you can just have 20, 30 things that just come and go and just no one's inspired and whatever, but then you get that one thing and it's kind of like you took a massive, you just want to run around the house, and that's the feeling I'm after. So and so just I'm still chasing that feeling, and I think there's still songs to be written, and yeah, I mean, I'm not religious or you know very spiritual or whatever, but I mean, if there was something, I think it is that intangible something. It's the quote unquote magic. And I guess
Mm,
that's what I'm still just enamored with the whole thing. So for
awesome.
better or worse.
Would you so if you could give yourself advice when you were starting off in 2005, what would it be?
uh, well, I guess by 2005, I was old already. So I guess I'd sort of, I think I'd gotten through a lot of you know, the the problems that go along with being in a creative band. For one, it was
Mhm.
it's good that we started as an older guys so that we didn't fall into any kind of like cocaine party, whatever. Just you lose your mind. We were too old for that. So there's a lot of backstage Scrabble going on. Um, but I guess the advice that I was just thinking about. I'm working on another project now, uh, and I was just kind of going over the various parts that I had, that I'm trying to piece them together, and I started second guessing something, and I was just now when I was walking my dog, and I was like, I think that the problem, we're social creatures, and so your whole life you just accumulate these voices in your mind of like, well, what
Mm,
that person's perspective be, and what that, and then you get this very, very, you get to be in your 50s, and you get a very crowded room full of what perceived criticisms. You try to head those off the past or whatever, and that's a very crowded room of people that don't think you can do it or don't
mm,
think your ideas are any good. And I think that, and I'm not saying I can do it, but I'm aware of it, and just not listening to that, just tune that out, man.
mm.
Take your hearing aids out. This party. So anyway, and I think that's a bet. I think that's good advice for anybody, really. I mean, whether it's a creative thing or whatever. So I mean, if you have drive and don't be your worst enemy. Don't
Mm.
You can come up with thousands of ways why something's a bad idea, but if you have one idea where you think it's a good idea, roll with that. I mean, unless it's mass murder or something, go for it.
Yeah, there's some ideas you don't want to follow through with for
Right?
sure.
Yeah. There's some rabbit holes you just don't go in.
So you and Red Fang have put out 5 studio albums since your self-titled in 2000, and most recently in 2021 with Arrows. Fantastic album, by the way, one of my favorites that came out during the pandemic, and I've listened to it all the time.
Oh, thank
So
you.
no worries. How has the band really approached, new projects over the years? Has it kind of always been the same process, or you always kind of redefining how you approach music? And like, what does that process really look like?
We've tried a bunch of different things. We used to do something which we haven't done recently, but I really enjoyed. I called nerd practice, and it would just be, well, generally Aaron and I would sit down with um, you know, whatever recordings from our phones or like a little Tascam, interview, condenser mics or whatever, and
Mhm.
so they're kind of trash, but anyway, you take them home. Put them on the computer, and we cut and paste and Frankenstein things and say, well, how is this? Because that is definitely my process. Is to physically do it. Be like, well, let's try this. Part A and part B together. All right, let's try part B and C. All right, does C go in? Does C flow naturally back into A? That kind of thing. And I need to
Mhm.
do it, but it's incredibly time consuming. And so I think, you can sort of make less people suffer through it if you do it at home. But and that's been fruitful. I mean, I certainly my favorite thing is to just bring in something. And truthfully, if I have an idea, even I never really get married to riffs or anything, but
Mhm.
the important thing to me is that it sparks an idea. And if my original part just ceases to exist, but something collectively occurred that we're enthusiastic about, I'm much more excited about a collaborative thing where it's this is the sum is greater than the parts, and that's why I've always wanted to. I never wanted to do well. I mean, I get more um, satisfaction out of um, uh, collaboration, and I
Mhm.
think that because everyone does have a different way of seeing things. I mean,
Right.
when I say, oh, that tree is green, I don't really know. I never can know what green means to you. You know what I mean? And so whatever. That's the fundamental, so,
Right.
struggle of being a human being. But I think that crossing over those kind of things with something, you know, even something esoteric, like music, it's exciting, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't
So
know. I just totally got lost in my own mind. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
no worries, no worries. So are there any like explicit challenges that you kind of run into a lot when creating music or
Well, I think that again with the collaboration, why I like it so much, because I find myself, I've got a bag of tricks. I don't know. I probably have 13 tricks, on the guitar, and I like my tricks, but man, they can start sounding really stale to me. And so, having someone else make a left turn at Albuquerque when we're doing something where it's like, oh, that's surprising, and my hand doesn't want to do it. I mean, I enjoy that too. It's like, well, that's seemingly impossible. Let me try it, and I think it's the funnest way to expand as a musician is to take take input in and do your own processing with someone else's idea, um yeah, so I guess as far as songwriting, sometimes I'll find myself being like, yeah, well, that's an amalgam of a song off our first record and the chorus off of our third record, and I can see that, so I'm like, well, that's a dud then, even though I'm not even sure people would pick up on that or care, but
hmm
I do. And so
yeah.
I mean, there's only whatever. I'm not dead yet. I got more ideas, but anyway, I guess that would be it. It's just you don't want to run over the same territory,
Right.
and because that's not why I do it. It's not a I don't ever want to be in a music factory that goes, oh well, it's this D beat into this, and that's the formula or whatever. I mean, so not necessarily anything wrong with that, especially if it's if it's like a saltine cracker for, you know, for what you have to say, you know, with your lyrics. And it's totally fine. But just for me, I'm always looking for some new grand, you know, whatever. Rock and roll Xanadu, man.
Absolutely. So actually, if you could redo a record, which one would it be and why?
Uh I guess I wouldn't redo any of them because they're, you know, it's like tattoos. If you have a tattoo, I totally don't believe in removing it. You gotta own that. You're like,
Right.
yeah, that was me. I did that. That seemed like a great idea to me at the time. And so as far as documenting your life, you know, I don't I think if you really want to redo something, all right,
Mhm.
well, just make a new album and learn from, you know, your quote unquote mistakes. You know, if there's something that's really bothersome to me or something, I'll say, well, I still love that idea. I don't think we executed it quite right. I'll come back to that idea and put it in a different, you know, in a different, say like a noodly part or something. I'll, you know, have it serve a different function in different songs.
Right.
Like, well, it didn't work as a verse, but maybe it'll work as a zany bridge,
Mhm.
you know. So sometimes I'll quote unquote redo something, but I, you know, I try to put it in a way where it says something different than it did before, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's like some of my favorite riffs, I'm like, yeah, it just doesn't really carry like I was
Mhm.
hoping it would, you know. And then you try to find a place where it does better, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love the idea of reimagining it because, those albums also become a part of your story at a certain point, and that is very important. So, is there one that you're more proud of than the others, or?
I guess I think the latest one I like because it's uh, I think we kind of I think we did some more weirder on that record than we have in other records. I think there was some unsafe choices, you know. But I think that's what I think is cool. It's like, you know, someone's gonna make a noise when they hear that, whether it's or all right, who knows? But you know, I think that it's, you know, it's intriguing, and I think that some of the more stranger, I think, has more longevity, you know, because
Mhm.
they're you can still pick things out of it, you know.
Right.
Maybe after 30 listens you hear something new, and that's what I hope for anyway. It's not some kind of, I'd like to think of our stuff more as a, you know, as a like a little book than a comic, you know.
Okay.
You know, I'd like to think there's enough depth in it that you can continue to enjoy it for really different reasons. As you get older, you know, you start giving more of a shit about backup vocals or whatever, you know.
Mhm. So, I read a bunch of your interviews. You're always talking about musical influences from Van Halen, Willie Nelson, the Bee Gees, YOB, Black Flag. It's all over the place. Lots of inspirations. You can definitely hear that coming off on your records. So, how do you really translate that? Like, how do you listen to something and kind of translate that into your own songwriting and creative process?
Well, I guess, you know, if I'm listening to something on the radio and it's a pop song or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Why is the bridge so anticipated? Why is it
Mhm.
so satisfying? You know, to land on it, and so I kind of process, you know, all kinds of music really, but in sort of coming from that same approach. It's like what is happening in this song as far as tension and release that makes it, because I honestly just enjoy listening to music.
Mhm.
But if there's something that I'm, you know, bobbing my head to in the car or whatever, I'm like, why am I doing that, you know? And I don't want to dissect it to the point where it takes all the joy out of it, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a nerd, so that actually is enjoyable to me. So yeah, so like, you know, I'm gonna take something, whatever, you know. I actually did this thought process just to see, and whatever it didn't really, well, it didn't really do a lot, but I thought I'd try it. I was like, well, all right, the Beatles, arguably one of the best pop bands of all time. what's the deal with their song structure? And I said, all right, I'm going to start writing songs that are Beatles songs structures. I'm going to say, okay, the verse is 8 measures, the chorus is 4 measures, and I just took the skeleton of it, and I look at the key changes, and I say, okay, how, if I was going to write one of my songs and plug it into that format, but the thing is, their structures are just as stripped down as ours are. It wasn't very fruitful because I realized it's verse, chorus, bridge, double chorus. That's it. And there are a lot of them are that, but they're not reinventing the wheel.
Right.
They're just very effective at it. And so I was like, okay, well, cool. As far as that goes, keep it simple, stupid. And that's, kind of what I got out of that. It's like, it doesn't have to go through some kind of, Ionian blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's like, if it's satisfying to you and if it's simplistic, then, and that's, I guess that's what I get a lot out of, listening to, pop music. You don't even need really key changes. If you've got something, if there's something that draws you in, it doesn't really need to go all the. I'm sort of an ADD guy, so I'm not really, but anyway, I get antsy. I'm playing a part for 2 iterations, and I'm like, well, now what? We got to do something else. It's like, do you chill, dude? Sometimes you got to chill. And I kind of got that out of, especially like with hip hop. There are so many songs that have great hooks and really cool, environments that are like these spooky soundscapes or whatever, and they don't move. They stick, and it's like that sort of drone. It's hypnotic, and that totally works. I mean, whatever. It's a helpful reminder that you don't need to do, it's like I said, I have 13 tricks. I don't need to use 12 of them in one song. Just 2 is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the idea, like, letting weird come out on your records and playing your music. And I was curious, what are the more unusual bands that you enjoy in your free time?
Yeah, I don't. I'm terrible at this. I think there's a band called, and maybe you can correct me. Is there a band called Hospital?
That sounds familiar.
They're real weird, and I want to say they did some video game soundtracks, and then that seemed to take them down a track where it got even weirder. It's like they'd have these fully goth verses, and then speed metal with double kick and real crispy guitars for chorus, and they're just like these weird, exquisite corpse songs. Anyway, that I found that pretty intriguing. Well, over the pandemic, I did a fair amount of listening to full albums that I've just never had time to listen to. Like early, like listening to the first Genesis albums. I'm like, I've never given myself the time. I'll listen to, the popular ones from the 80s, whatever, when I grew up. But man, there's some real deep tracks. And so I did a lot of that. There's a David Bowie album. It's like a song cycle about this British guy, and I'm not even sure exactly what's going on, but it's up sounding. It's kind of, it's got like spoken word on it, and it sounds a lot like Black Star, really. But that album is a trip. Anyway, I love it. I love it when David Bowie's great at he's just saying, "Oh, you think you know me," and then sending the hardest left curve ever. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess just if I get turned on to things, I'm not very exploratory. It's funny to do things on my own, but when somebody turns me on to something, the weirder the better. I mean, whether I'll listen to it 100 times or whatever, but it's that kind of thing. But yeah, the pandemic was great. Like the Sun records, I listened to all the Sun records. Who does that? So apologies to guys in Sun, but it's pretty dense. I mean, I don't know how many people can handle being in that headspace for that long, but I did it. It's some dark, weird And sometimes you're like, oh, I mean, honestly, I think I get emotionally squeamish about stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I don't know, but man, whatever. So pandemic, yeah. So there's your silver lining.
So how did you come to really pick up guitar? Pre Red Fang, how did that kind of unfold?
I played trumpet in school band, starting when I was in 5th grade through 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy a friend of mine, Preston Pingree, I believe was his name. Whoa, that came out of nowhere. Anyway, he got a guitar, and I was like, whoa, that's like on MTV or whatever, and so I pestered my mom, and she got me an Ibanez Roadstar 2, and that was my first guitar. And then I just got really obsessed with that. Instead, I quit trumpet, which makes me sad, in retrospect. But it just wasn't cool, quote unquote. Although I blame the public school system for not exposing me. It's like I'm playing Good King Wenceslas when I should be listening to Miles Davis. You know what I mean? So whatever, that's okay. Public education, they got to be a little beige buffet, I guess, so that they don't get in trouble with PTA or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, that's how I started doing it, and then just reverb. I mean, I think I remember not having strings, and so I would break the string and then just turn the reverb all the way up, the distortion all the way up on my PV Backstage Plus amp, and just play that broken string, just clacking around in this cavern, and I was like, this is the best ever. I think that really inspired me. I was like, man, a broken guitar can do so much,
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was where all my subsequent bad ideas came from.
So how did you really, hone those bag of 13 tricks? Was there like a goal in mind when you started playing?
Well, I guess, I mean, I think I figured out pretty early on that I did not have any natural ability for the instrument. I just liked it. And luckily, I guess I started playing 8th grade. So I was 13 or 14. And I was listening to, like, I don't know, Van Halen, ZZ Top, stuff like that, these fantastic guitar players. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. But then right around then is when I heard, like, Black Flag, My War, and, these iconic punk records, where I was like, oh, you don't have to be good at this to say something. And I think that's kind of why I stuck to it. I just felt like there was a lot to say. You don't have to be a virtuoso, I mean, at anything, really. You just have to have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I stuck with it. And and it is more, I don't know, I found a culture in, I started playing bands in my freshman year in high school, and I found a culture there, and I felt like I belonged and stuff. So, I think that was a big part of it too, was being part of a culture,
Cool. So do you have any tracks that are your favorite to play?
Well, I mean, I like playing the hits because people get so excited. I will probably never get tired of playing Prehistoric Dog, because it's that, I mean, I'm not out there to impress as much as I am to be, to make a thing. We're all doing this together, and there's a real feeling that we're all having that same I just took a feeling together, and that's exciting. And and that's why I think I'd like performing to a crowd, is I want to feel like I'm a part of them as much as they're part of the music, so yeah. But I also like the ones that nobody likes, so whatever. We played Unreal Estate for a couple of trips right after the new album came out, and I'm not sure how that went over, but I loved it. So I was like, well, I mean, I think the front of the set and the back of the set are for the fans, and then the middle is for the band. And so I was like, this is my section.
Yeah, so you and the band Red Fang, and famous for pop culture references, and your music videos and your collaborations. You released a Fraggle Rock cover, which is really cool, a D&D soundtrack song, and you even have branded beer and hot sauce, which that's just awesome. Do you really have like a favorite project that you've done or worked on outside of just producing music for Red Fang?
Well, during the pandemic, we were all sort of like, well, what do we do in the interim, and I did a sort of a fun thing on Instagram where I was writing riffs. I was like, you make a Red Fang song, because we couldn't get together because of pandemic. So and we're not like an email me the riff and I'll figure something out. We just never, and whatever. It's cool. But anyway, it just meant that we were kind of sitting doing nothing anyway. So and that was a pretty fun collaborative effort with the people on Instagram, and some bands really flayed these things out and did some great. Anyway, but the other thing that I did, whatever, thinking outside the box, I was like, how about a D&D module? What do you think? And so, I talked to this guy who's actually Chris Funk's dungeon master, and he designed this module for us, and I was all about it, man. I like came up with backstories. I like interviewed everybody else in the band, and we all had backstories. And basically, it was a D&D module where you could play as the members of Red Fang in an alternate reality, swords, you know. But the guy is really creative, and I was like, man, what a cool thing. And I love D&D as a kid, so part of me was like, I get to play D&D. This is great. So, and then we talked to a guy in Brazil about illustrating it, and it was moving along, but then it just died on the vine, and it still makes me sad. But I really had a good time with that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a blast.
Yeah,
Um,
when I was in, seventh grade, I loved Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I would just burn. It would be like, 78 degrees, perfectly sunny day, and I would spend all day indoors playing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm kind of into reality avoidance, I guess.
so Red Fang hails from the city of the weird in Portland. How do you think the city has had a an impact on the band? Its reputation really influenced your music at all?
No, I think the reason we all ended up here was because, back in the day, in the late '90s or whatever, it was one of the last big West Coast cities not to have gotten, have had a population explosion and rent spikes. When I moved here, I don't know, 90 96 maybe. Oh God, I don't even know. Well, whatever. It was before 2000, for sure. 96, 97. Anyway, it was a place where you could work a part-time job and
Mhm.
and get by and still do music. And I think that's what attracted a lot of people. Everyone wanted the the West Coast, laid back sort of environment, but couldn't afford to have the San Francisco rent. So and I guess it really isn't that way anymore. But
Mhm.
you know, that's fine. But I think, but as far as and culturally, I would say, yeah, there was a really cool, a really big music scene. I grew up in Tucson, and we would play house parties. It was very insular. Not a lot of national acts came through, so we were all just the 10 or so bands that were actively playing shows would all play shows together. So it would be like a super gnarly punk band, a garage rock band, and then I would be in, like, I don't know, some Iggy and the Stooges thing or whatever. And we'd all play shows together. It didn't matter. The scene was too small to be like, oh, that's not that death metal isn't enough beats per minute for me or whatever. You couldn't be that. You were just excited about live music. And so, and sort of the same thing in San Diego, expensive place, very conservative place. So the music scene is a little more anemic than other places.
Mhm.
So I guess to some degree, when I moved to Portland, it just opened my eyes. Like, wow, there's subgenres on subgenres. There's so many people creating music here.
Mhm.
It's so I guess it's inspiring in that way. There's
Okay.
you feel you're surrounded by creative people, and you're watching people on the regular making new ideas, things sparking new ideas. And I was like, man, I've got to get in on this. And so I guess, yeah, that probably pushed me to some degree to be like, well, I want to stand out in the crowd.
Awesome. Yeah, so Red Fang are about to begin a tour on the East Coast. You're co-lining with Baroness. You're going all up the East Coast. Very excited to go myself. And then you're actually going to go back out west to headline your own tour. What is your really favorite part about touring overall?
I just like being, I just like the lifestyle. I like being on the move. When I'm at home, I don't do a heck of a lot. I make sure the couch doesn't float away, so it's just, it agrees with me. I just like being on the road and being a new place every day. We did a tour. I don't know, maybe, was it post pandemic? I don't know. It was, no, yeah, it was the first European thing we did after the pandemic. It was a festival run, and some shows got canceled because basically what happened during the pandemic is all these bands couldn't play because obviously, getting a bunch of people in a small space was not the idea. So once the restrictions were lifted, it was like all these bands were like water in a folded garden hose. So there was too many. The markets were all flooded. It was really hard to get holds on clubs and everything. So in any case, we had like 3 or 4 shows canceled, which is fine. We actually got paid not to play them. I was like, you could pay me not to do all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I just remember being at, we get a little mini nightliner. It's sort of like a 3/4 size tour bus. It works for us. It's got a toilet for peeing and a espresso machine. Anyway, but so, that's our little house, and it was the summer, and we stayed at some, like KOA campsites or whatever, and they're really decked out over there in general. And I remember one day, swimming in a lake, and then we walked, we walked to the store, and we got some briquettes, and we got some meat, and we grilled, and just had a great day at the beach or on this lakeside.
Mm-hmm.
And then went to sleep, and I woke up and went outside to find a toilet, and I was on a different lake. I was like, this is the best kind of space travel ever. I just go to bed, and I wake up in some other vacation spot. This is the best. So I don't know. That's pretty amazing. It's not all awesome. I mean, we just did a South American tour where it was something like, I don't know, something like 17 flights in 14 days or something. And I was like, that's too much airport, not enough sleep. This is, it was a grind. I mean, it's worth it. I love playing music, so whatever. It's time to make the donuts or whatever. But sometimes it can really suck. Yeah. But when it doesn't, when you get a minute to, stare at the Eiffel Tower or something like that, you're like, God, my life is good. So I guess I live for those moments.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure, post pandemic too, it's been feeling a lot better, to be able to go out on the road and actually interact with crowds and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And what I found is that I think there's a renewed energy towards live music, which I think was maybe I wouldn't say it's flagging, but I don't know. People were like way more enthusiastic post pandemic, and I was like, yeah, man, I'm excited too. This is great. So anyway, so that's nice. I'm with AI and everything else. It's like, I don't know how much job security I have, but that made me feel good. I was all right. People still do this.
Do you have? I mean, I know you mentioned you were working on another project. What's really next after these tours? Do you have anything planned with Red Fang? Or are you really working on your own stuff, or anything else fun and exciting coming up?
Yeah, I think that probably after the tour in August, August. That's a European festival run, I think, is the last thing we do. And then we're going to take a break. I don't know how long of a break, but I think people are just kind of wanting to reassess what they're doing. And so yeah, I'm being proactive, and I've started writing songs outside of the band so I'll have something to do. So that's what so I guess I don't know. There'll be some ill-advised project coming from me next year. How's that?
Sounds awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up our time today. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Thank you so much again, Bryan. Make sure to catch Red Fang and Baroness at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park in New Jersey on May 16th, and tune in to hear them on the loudest college radio station, 89.5 WSOU.
Boom. Thanks, Chris.